weekend. I think we not necessarily were cocky, but we were not really up to what we could be because we knew, oh, this is Southeastern. So I think that really factored into the game. So I'm hoping we have a turnaround on that going into our first SEC game this weekend.
Sean, we had questions coming into the season. We still had questions after the first game. Do we still have questions after LSU's second game of the season?
Yeah, so two things that I noticed last week. Okay, so it's human nature, first of all, to have a letdown. So, you have Miami opening week, and then you have Southeastern, and then you have Auburn. So you've got a small game wedged in between two big matchups. You're going to come out flat. So it is human nature to, maybe take this game a little lightly. But the main concern as far as the football aspect of it is still the offensive line. They continue to struggle last week. I sent in an extra max protect. You've got to be able to move the ball against Southeastern just blocking 5. If you can't do it against Southeastern, it's going to be really hard to do it against these SEC schools. And that's still one of my question marks, and I don't feel a little better about it right now, especially going tomorrow. So we'll see.
I feel that. I mean, it's really interesting. I think that there's a lot of different strategies you can have in a game like against Southeastern. On one hand, you're supposed to blow them out, and it's not necessarily a practice, but not the hardest game on their schedule, so there's a lot of things you can try. But at the same time, with a game like what we have tomorrow coming after that schedule, you might not want to show too much. Courtney, which of those two cases do you think was more of the case on Saturday? Was it LSU being a little inept, or was it just them not showing their hand for tomorrow's game?
I honestly think it was more of a just, like I said, they were coming off that big game and wedged in between a huge ACC game and our SEC opener. I think they were just they were a little more laid back, I guess, and weren't really, taking it as heavily as they do these big games. And so that's really it, in my opinion.
Yeah, it took a Hail Mary at the end of the first half to kind of put it out of reach, I guess. I mean, it was 17-0. If we don't get the touchdown going into half, that's not good. I mean, it's not. It's just the overall feel of the game. I thought there'd be a little more excitement with it being a home opener, but I get it. You have, come off the big win against Miami. You got Auburn next week. Even, the fans, the stadium kind of just felt flat. I think everybody's just looking for it because they know what is happening tomorrow, and I think it was just a flat. Just flat was the way I could describe it.
It'll be really interesting to see how the Tigers match up against the SEC West's other Tigers. The last 6 years, the home team has won every one of these games. You go back to 3 years ago, Leonard Fournette running through everybody and their mother on the way to probably the best game of his career. The game after that was the Hot Seat Bowl, where it was kind of preconceived going into that either Gus Malzahn or Les Miles lose his job. Les Miles, Tigers ran out of time on the final play, scoring what would have been a touchdown if the clock hadn't run out, and Les Miles' tenure was officially ended at LSU. And you go to last year where Auburn was rolling as one of the top-ranked teams in the country, comes into the Death Valley, gets a big 20-point lead to start the game, and LSU comes back to win and gets probably the biggest win of the year last year.
Yeah, probably the biggest win for Coach O. And if you don't recall, they wanted Malzahn out after that. There was talks of Malzahn losing his job, and which is crazy because he ended up being a game away from the college football playoff last year. But yeah, there were talks last year about maybe wanting to fire him after blowing that game because they had no business losing that game at being up 20 at half, controlling the clock and everything.
It's really interesting, I think, when you compare the two programs. We talk about the fervor in Baton Rouge around LSU football and how there almost seems to be a perpetual hot seat for coaches that head up this football team. A lot can be said about Auburn. Gene Chizik goes alongside with Cam Newton, leads them to a national championship in 2010. Wow. And within 2 years, he loses his job.
Yeah.
Gus Malzahn
doesn't win an SEC game.
Yeah. Gus Malzahn takes him to the brink of the last BCS championship of that era. Doesn't happen, and he's perpetually on the hot seat, yet Auburn keeps finding a way to win. It's funny because this is one of the rivalries in the SEC that's just kind of weird.
It's wild. I mean, you can go back to the Demetrius Byrd touchdown in 2007. I mean, the game last year, 2 years ago, running out of time. I mean, there's so many that I've got notes here to 12-10, 7-3. There's so many just weird games. I think the last 10 or so years, at Auburn, there's only been like 2 blowouts. So everything, it's really close. It is, like you described it perfectly, weird is the word.
Yeah, and Auburn might be coming in this game with a little bit more vengeance because it was that loss against LSU last year that kept them out of the national championship perspective once they lost the SEC championship to Georgia. So a lot to play for tomorrow. Let's talk about those Auburn War Eagle Tigers, whatever their name is. A lot of hype around their defense. Very similar to LSU. That defensive front is nasty. Tell me about it, Courtney.
They've got 7 starters coming back this season, which has people a little worried. They've got so much power on their defense, and that's got LSU pretty worried. But we go to LSU. Like, we're known for our defense, and so that's something that we definitely have to consider going into this weekend.
Yeah, like you said, these teams are very similar. Their defensive line, they lose the lead sack man from last year. Well, they return the projected top 10 pick in Derek Brown. The quarterback position might be a little better. Jared Stidham threw for over 3,000 yards last year, second most all-time at Auburn, and set the single-season completion of 246 completions last year. He's a dark horse for a Heisman because they're good enough, and he's good enough to carry him this second year in the system. They got a lot of big play potential. He was in the top 10 last year with 17 passes of over 40 yards. The running back position's a little unknown, similar to us. So they lose the leading SEC rusher, Kerryon Johnson, last year, and the 5th leading rusher in the SEC, Cam Petway. And they don't know who's really going to do it. It's been by committee the first 2 games. Cam Martin's a guy. He had 80 yards against Washington. And then last week, Jatavius Whitlow is a redshirt freshman. He had 122 yards last week against Alabama State and a touchdown. So it's been running back by committee, similar to us. And then their offensive line is my biggest concern, and I think that's where we have a chance in this. They only return 1 guy. That's offensive guard Markel Harrell, the only returning starter from the SEC championship game in the Peach Bowl. They lost 2 All-SEC linemen to graduation, so they're really reshuffling. And while I watched the Washington game over again, that's the first thing that stuck out to me was how much Jared Stidham was under pressure, getting out of the pocket early, didn't have time to settle in, and I think that's where we have a chance.
Jared Stidham, a lot has been made about him coming into this game and going into the season. I think with the similarities Auburn and LSU have, I think the one differing factor that commentators keep pointing to is the experience that Stidham had and the success he had last year. Had a rough game against LSU. A lot of question the play calling of Gus Malzahn, getting too conservative and letting that game go out of hand. But he had a great Iron Bowl. He had some great games for this team down the stretch. Courtney, is Jared Stidham as good as people keep saying he is?
You know, I'm not exactly sure about him. I mean, it is his second year. Is he a sophomore?
He is a junior.
Okay, so
I believe. Yeah. Junior or sophomore.
He's got SEC experience, which is huge in a conference like this. Like, yeah, you can have quarterbacks for multiple years. It's completely different down here in the SEC. And so I think that experience as an SEC quarterback really is going to factor into his performance this weekend.
It is, and I think that's the thing that separates the 2 teams is the fact that experience at the quarterback position. You know, he's been on the road in a big-time game last year coming to LSU playing. They pretty much had the game won. Like you said, the conservative play call, they ran it down our throat in the first half. They did anything they could, and then completely different second half. This year, they've got, people talk about our tough schedule. They had Washington to open. They go to Alabama. They go to Georgia. They play us. They go to Mississippi State. So people talk about our schedule. Their schedule is brutal. You know, they're picked second in the West, but I mean, if he can get through that, then yes, he's as good as advertised because, I mean, Auburn fans, it comes down to beating Alabama. And he did that. Cam Newton did it. If you can beat Alabama, it doesn't matter what else you do. Now, obviously, you want to win more games, but that's the primary goal is beating Alabama every year, and he did that last year.
Obviously, Auburn is the favorite in this game tomorrow. I believe right now they are 9.5 point favorite, according to Las Vegas. A lot of that can be said because the game's at Jordan-Hare, and home field advantage in the SEC alone is a big swing. A place like that, I think outside of Tiger Stadium, probably outside of places like the Swamp and Kyle Field, Jordan-Hare is known as one of the toughest places to play in the country. And again, the home team has won, I think, is it 6 of the last game, all of the 6 last games of the series?
Something all like of that. The 6.
Yeah, all of the 6 last games of the series. So it's going to be a challenge for Joe Burrow and the Tigers. We keep acting like Joe Burrow is a freshman or that he doesn't have this experience, and yes, he has been sitting This is the first chance he's gotten to actually lead a football team to actually start, but the man is a graduate, and he went to a university, Ohio State, where they play in places like the Big House or like Happy Valley, where there's a lot of challenges going for a visiting team.
Yep.
How big is Joe Burrow's play in this game, Courtney?
I think it's huge. I really do. SEC home field is such a big deal. I mean, I've been in practice this week. The crowd noise is insane. And I mean, we all heard Joe Burrow talking about, what did he say? He was sleeping with headphones on. I think home field is going to be so big in this game, and I really think Joe Burrow is prepared for that.
Yeah, and it has been in the series. Auburn's actually, I think, won 13 straight home games. They won 5 straight over ranked opponents. Listen, we're going to have to get good quarterback play tomorrow to have a chance. It's as simple as that. We're not going to just sit there and run the ball down their throats against that front. It's just not going to happen. You've got to you got to spread it around. You got to keep them off balance and sustain drives. And it comes down to Joe Burrow making some throws. He's going to have to make some plays. I thought he took a step back last week, but if he's ready to right the ship, this is the perfect time this week because you're going on the road against a tough opponent. I mean, it doesn't get any better, going to Auburn, this rivalry. He can really make a statement this week and, please a lot of LSU fans who kind of, seesawing back and forth. Mm-hmm. And if he goes in there and has a good game, I mean, there's no telling, the bandwagon's going to get on with it.
Oh, yeah, I think it is a huge game changer for him, not necessarily on his playing, but on the fan base and the fan base's support.
Because they're still a little unsure.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Auburn defense is obviously a strength, especially that front seven. But that secondary is a little inexperienced, and I think an advantage that LSU might have is the receiving core. Tell me about these LSU receivers. What do you like from them so far, and what do you wish we could have seen?
So for the LSU receivers, the first guy that sticks out to me that I've been so impressed with is Jamar Chase. To me, he's looked like the best guy in the group. Justin Jefferson has played, I think he's the leading receiver right now statistically. But Jamar Chase, he's caught the short pass. He's gotten the end zone. He should have had another one week 1. I've been a little disappointed with Jonathan Giles. And I think a lot of it has to do with scheme and, personnel because we ran a lot of max protect. And I think he's a guy that you've got to get the ball to. Just, it doesn't matter what way. It can be quick, underneath, over the top. But I've been a little disappointed, especially going all offseason with Orgeron giving him the number 7, talking about how good he's been in practice. I just haven't seen it yet, and I'm waiting on him to have a big game, and I hope it's this week because we could really use some underneath to get Burrow's confidence up and get the completion percentage up, too. So he's been the most disappointing, but as far as my surprise is Jamar Chase. I've enjoyed watching him play.
Courtney, Nick Bossett's kind of separated himself as the head of this LSU running core easily. He's gotten the most touches, and he's had the most success. A team like Auburn is going to have a better defensive front than obviously Southeastern, and a Miami team whose defense we thought was good but was a little too turnover happy. Do you see Brissett having the same type of success against Auburn, or is the running game going to have to find new ways, maybe running outside the tackles, some pitches, some weird scheme things like that, to pick up some yardage against this Auburn Tiger defense?
Yeah, I personally think as far as running back goes, I think Brissett's going to have another great game, but I don't think it's going to be the Brissett show like it has been these past few weeks. I think we're going to see a little bit of some other running backs coming in to take on this big Auburn front line on this defense. Like, I think he's going to have a great game. It's Nick Brissett. We've seen him these past 2 weeks dominate, but I think we're going to see a smaller number this week.
Yeah, nobody's happier for the guy than me, obviously. Senior sticking around. But look, he's averaging 6 yards a carry. He's not going to run for 100 yards every week. And he's not running. You're not going to beat Auburn running right at him, just consistently running right at him. They're going to have to do some things, open up the short passing game because, they always say the run sets up the pass. Well, it could work both ways. You could set the pass up because if not, they're just going to load the box, and you're not running at Auburn, especially with that front 7. So, yeah, they might have to get some, get Clyde Edwards-Helaire in there in the passing game because you can run the short passing game, some screens. I would love to see some, variety on offense. But, yeah, you can't expect him to run for 100, 120 yards a game. But I'm all for it if he does because then we'll be in a good position to win.
Talk about that short passing game and what those running backs, and that's another way to utilize them. And we're talking about pass game in general with these wide receivers. The tight ends have seemed like they've been a very underutilized group for this LSU team. You have guys like obviously Foster Moreau, and you have a couple of the weapons there on the tight end group. Do you guys see the tight ends being utilized more in a game like this where you have to get a little bit more creative offensively?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to. Foster Moreau has 2 catches on the year, and I think at the beginning of previewing the season, we talked about getting the tight ends involved. You're not going to pick up 40, 50-yard chunk plays all the time. You're going to have to matriculate the ball down the field, control time of possession, and doing that is hitting a tight end on a 3 to 5 yard route or hitting a receiver over the middle of 2-3 yards. You've got to have those, and we haven't seen it yet. And to win the game tomorrow, they're going to have that.
Yeah, I definitely think this is not going to be the same defense we've seen these past 2 weeks. Last week, there wasn't really an offense to defend, and the week before, we were so hyped up about this Miami team. I think this week you're going to see a lot of Foster Moreau, and you're going to see a lot of different defense.
Every game in the sport of football, big players come up and have large impacts on these games. You do this every week. Who do you guys think are going to have a breakout game, or who do you think is a player for this LSU team that's going to have a big game tomorrow on the Plains at Jordan-Hare? Courtney, I'm going to start with you. Who's your pick?
Personally, I think if you look at the history of the Auburn-LSU series, it almost always comes down to special teams. Last year you had that punt return with Chark and all field goals.
Right.
And the year before that, Auburn won solely on field goals. And we've seen Cole Tracy have great games these past 2 weeks, and so I really think he's your guy to watch tomorrow.
Yeah, special teams, it's kind of like that area of the field we haven't talked about.
We forgot to talk about it last week. They were so well in Miami.
And it's been, probably the best improvement on this LSU team.
Absolutely.
Even with the quarterback play and the offense and how good the defense has been special teams and its consistency. And it's almost like, if special teams is doing its job and is doing very well, you almost don't talk about it.
You never, that's a kicker makes field goal. That's what they're supposed to do.
Sean, who's your pick to have a breakout game?
So I don't have one guy personally. I have a whole group, and it's the offensive line. They have got to have success and control the line of scrimmage tomorrow to have a chance. I was a little disappointed against Southeastern. We should have been able to move it. Miami was okay. We're playing. Miami's one of the better defenses they're going to see, but you've got to eventually have continuity. I know we've had some injuries and some suspensions and stuff like that. So the offensive line has to play better tomorrow. They've got to play well to have a chance.
O said last night he's predicting this offensive line this weekend to be the best offensive line you're going to see this weekend, and I trust him on that.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I know they're switching around personnel a little bit, taking a couple defenders.
That's another thing. Switching personnel because you've got to have continuity. Those each week, it's going to get better. It has to, and it will because at week to week, as soon as they have the continuity on the offensive line, you can't just keep reshuffling guys. As soon as they settle in, it's going to get better.
We're going to get to picks in just a second, but I'll say that my breakout player for tomorrow is probably going to be Jonathan Giles.
I forgot to mention that.
Right, he hasn't been in the scheme a whole lot, hasn't been utilized. I think this is the type of game offense, if you have an entire half of or 3/4 of a playbook that you haven't even used yet, which is entirely possible, Jonathan Giles can be a big feature on that, and somebody out on the outside or even in the slot where he has a big impact on this game. That's a young secondary they're going up against.
Yep, and like you said, big-time players, if he wants to be a big-time player, all the talk, he shows up in this one, it'd be awesome.
Absolutely, and I think also, in reference to calling my shot, I think that for LSU to have success and I think to make a statement offensively, I want to see them go out first drive and take a shot downfield, put those defenders on their heels, and try to take people out of the box.
Yeah, keep the linebackers, off balance, and so they can't just crowd the line of scrimmage because it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I think tomorrow's definitely going to be a test of Joe Burrow's arm strength. But before we pick the LSU Auburn game, let's get into our picks for the rest of the week. A couple of out-of-conference games and all the SEC action. Now, last week, I think we all in all did pretty good with our picks, except for you, Sean. Pick South Carolina against Georgia.
That game
not the best pick
was
in the world.
awful.
Correct, and I think there was something else.
I think they might have won the coin toss, and that's it. And I had Florida.
But you got Stanford beating USC, and you had Florida winning. Yeah, sorry about that.
And Arizona State.
Arizona State. We all had Arizona State beating Michigan State.
They're back.
Man, our hatred of the Big Ten really paid dividends last week, didn't it?
I think I picked Pitt as well, and they lost by 100. So
that was rough. So let's get back to
it's bounce back week.
Probably one of the bigger games of the year nationally is the face-off that's going to happen in Dallas, the Ohio State Buckeyes. I think ranked number 2 as of right now. Number 4. The number 4 Ohio State Buckeyes are taking on the TCU Horned Frogs in Dallas. Basically a pseudo home game for TCU. How do you guys see this game going?
Listen, before we start, game day should be at Auburn LSU. They're here this week. This is the last week Urban Meyer is not going to be on the sidelines. TCU is going to be ready. It's going to be exciting, man. Gary Patterson's a heck of a coach. I'm going to go with Ohio State, though.
I'm going TCU. I think I mean, you look at us just now playing in the AT&T Stadium. That home field advantage was so big for us, and them being right up the street is going to be huge for the Horned Frogs. So I'm going TCU.
It is a factor. Urban Meyer's not going to be there, and I think it's a close game. I think Ohio State is better physically. They're better talent-wise. They're better in almost every aspect of the game. TCU has speed, and they have Gary Patterson. And Gary Patterson is somebody who just pulls out these weird, fluky wins.
Has good wins.
Yeah,
right?
That's probably one of the better coaches in college football. Nobody talks about. I'm going to go crazy. I'm going to pick TCU in this game. I think if there's a time for Ohio State to fall without their head coach, it's going to be now. Last week, USC went up to Palo Alto, played the Stanford Cardinal, and lost. That was the one pick you got right. Stanford beating USC pretty handedly up in Stanford. Probably now this is the biggest game of USC's season to get them back on track. Meanwhile, Texas has been a dumpster fire from the beginning, from losing to Maryland to
winning against Tulsa last week.
Yeah, winning in quotation marks against Tulsa. Big game in Austin, USC, Texas. Courtney, where do you see this going?
I'm going USC. I really think Texas is having an off season this year, and that home field I don't think is going to be that big of a factor this week.
Well, you remember last year how awesome this game was. It was incredible. I think that Texas pulls it out because I don't know why. I don't know. I'm just going to go Texas.
Okay, you're going to go
Texas. The game's going to be awesome, though.
Yeah, definitely.
And, whenever I pick a USC game, all I can do is think of my mother who loves and bleeds Cardinal and gold. And this is for you, Mom. I'm picking the Longhorns.
And you touted the quarterback last night. You touted the USC quarterback. He looked like a freshman last week.
JT Daniels is great, but he's 17 years old.
Yep, he looked like a freshman last week.
Yeah, if you can't vote, I think you're going to have issues in some of these big games. So it's going to be an issue. Let's get into SEC play. Really tough matchup right here. Middle Tennessee going to Athens to take on the Bulldogs. How do you guys see this going, Sean?
Well, Georgia's good. I knew they were, but I definitely found it out last week. It's going to be hard for anybody to beat them. I think they're the second best team in the country. I'm going Georgia.
I agree with that. I think Georgia has another shot to be a national contender this year, and I think this is going to be a walk in the park for them.
And it's our first sweep of the day. I'm also going to take the Bulldogs. Your Kentucky Cats coming off of dismantling a 31-year curse streak, whatever you'll call it. We're going to be hosting the formidable Murray State
Racers.
That's right. Courtney, how do you think your Cats are going to do?
Murray State is one of those games we play either them or another local team called Moorhead almost every year, and sometimes those games take us off guard because we're Kentucky and that's what Kentucky does. But coming off of last week, I am so excited to see what these boys do against a team like the Racers. So Cats all the way.
Yeah, if this was March Madness college basketball, Murray State might have a chance, but look, they're not going to follow this with emotional letdown. There's a lot of excitement around the fan base, so I'm going Kentucky.
Clean sweep for the Cats. I'll take them as well. UTEP is going to Knoxville to take on one of the weirder teams in the country this year, Tennessee Volunteers. Who knows what we're going to get from them. Get destroyed the first week against West Virginia. Against a cupcake last week, run up the score. You guys seeing anything different this week?
I have no clue what to think about the Vols.
I'm in the same way. I really do not know about this Tennessee team this year.
I'm going to pick the Vols, but they can't lose this game. It would not be good.
Courtney,
I'm going with the Vols too, but I agree with Sean that if they lose this game, it's over. Tennessee's done.
I'm going to pick UTEP because I like chaos, and why not?
Okay.
You know what? Nowhere burns couches quite like Knoxville. So we'll see.
Maybe Morgantown, but
it's close. But yeah, it's very close.
Did you see videos of Kentucky straight after the win last weekend?
I'm talking about a win. You're talking about a win. I'm talking about just chaos.
I'm talking about physically burning couches.
Agree to disagree. North Texas going to be up in Fayetteville taking on the Arkansas Razorbacks. Is it safe to say we all have Arkansas on this one?
I'm going to take Arkansas, yep.
Yep. We Pig Suey. Colorado State going to the Swamp to take on Courtney's favorite team, the Florida Gators. Courtney, who you got in this game?
I got to go with Florida. It's Colorado State. Florida's favored by 20. It's gonna be the Gators.
Sean?
Listen, Florida didn't look good last week. I touted Dan Mullen being the quarterback genius, and they struggled. Felipe Frank struggled, but I'm going to go with Gators.
One of the weirder, kind of bigger games in conference this week, Alabama traveling to Oxford against Ole Miss.
This is a doozy.
This is a very doozy. I think it's always been a weird game, Alabama-Ole Miss, because Ole Miss always scores a lot of points, and Alabama never did. Now Alabama also scores a lot of points. So I think Ole Miss is going to score like upwards of 42 points, and Alabama's still going to win by 30.
77 to 45.
77 to 45, something ridiculous like that. That's where I'm going. Where are you guys going with this one?
I'm going Bama. I do think that Ole Miss will put some numbers up, especially being at at Ole Miss, but I still think it's going to be Bama.
Sean?
Listen, Ole Miss has beaten them a few times in the last few years. They're the only team that has had success, but it's no longer Hugh Freeze. They score a lot, but, man, Bama's defense is too good.
Mm-hmm.
They're so good. And Tua is fantastic. They're scary.
The pride of Lafayette going to Mississippi State and Stark Vegas to go see if the Raging Cajuns can take anything out of the Bulldogs up in Mississippi State. Sean, where do you see this game going?
Look, man, last week Mississippi State went up to Manhattan and they took care, dominated them. Fitzgerald came back, but the running game was the story. I think they had over 200 yards rushing. I'm going Mississippi State, man. They're loaded.
Courtney?
Yeah, I'm going Mississippi State. It's hard enough for an SEC team to go into that arena. I can't imagine what it's going to be like for a team like ULL.
I'll agree. ULL can't handle the cowbells. Mizzou playing a weird game against Purdue again. Seems like it should be a basketball game, right?
Yeah.
Really interesting matchup. The bottom of the SEC with the bottom of the Big Ten. Where do you guys see this game going?
I'll just pick Missouri. I'll go with the SEC. Purdue's had a lot of hype around the program. They've kind of been disappointing. They lost to Northwestern to start the season, and yeah, I'm just gonna go Missouri.
I'm going Purdue. One, to be different, and that advantage that they're gonna have being in the Big Ten, I think.
Won a big game to start the season off against Northwestern. Actually, no,
they
Northwestern
lost.
won that game.
Yeah.
They lost. If
That's
they would have won it,
a lot of hype.
That's right. Yeah, a lot of hype. I'm going to go with Mizzou. I just think they have the athletes, and their speed on the edge is going to beat Purdue pretty easily. Marshall is going to go to Columbia to go up against the South Carolina team who's still licking their wounds after a tough game against Georgia.
That game's not happening.
They canceled.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I made this list a week ago. That game is not happening. ULM, Kyle Field against Texas A&M after their tough loss against Clemson.
So, yeah, they pretty much laid it all out there against Clemson last week. I think they're like 29-point favorites. ULM might cover, but I think A&M's going to win because they've got Bama next week.
Yeah, I'm going A&M. I think they're going to have a big game going into Alabama.
I agree with you, Sean. I think ULM covers, but A&M just
they're just going to get through the game, and it's looking on next week.
Before we get to the LSU Auburn game, big game. I kind of have this game on upset alert. Vanderbilt, the mighty Commodores, traveling up to South Bend to face the Notre Dame Irish, who, as good as they looked at week one, I think they're kind of overrated.
Yeah.
We'll see, but this is one of the bigger games for both teams this season. Courtney, who do you got?
I got Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame, I know you say they're overrated, but they're still a talented team, favored by 13.5 last time I checked. I think it's going to be the Irish.
Sean?
I'm going to go Notre Dame as well.
Okay, I think this is the type of game Notre Dame loses and shifts them out of the national perspective. They'll beat Stanford, they'll beat USC, they'll lose to Vanderbilt.
And they'll have the Vandy loss on the schedule.
Right.
It happened.
And finally, your LSU Fighting Tigers, really quickly as they travel to Jordan-Hare. Who do you guys have in that game against LSU Auburn?
I think we break this home streak. I think I think we're excited going into this week. I think that we are ready to face another major opponent rather than the cupcake we got last week, and so I've got faith.
Sean?
With the exception of the 14 game, this series at Auburn's been so close the last 6 or 7 times they've played. The things that help you have success on the road are defense and special teams. We have that, but the offensive line is still a question mark. I'm going to go Auburn 17-13. In a heartbreaker.
I'm also going to pick Auburn just like I picked Auburn last year and like I picked Miami 2 weeks ago. I'll pick them out of spite.
There we go.
As the good luck charm. Every time I pick against the Tigers, they prove me wrong.
Tigers are going to be winners.
But it's tough. And Jordan-Hare is a tough place to play. But thank you guys for joining me today. Thank you guys for your pick. You guys listening out there, we will be back next week to recap what happens tomorrow and to get you ready for LSU and La Tech. For Sean Larkin and Courtney Brewer, I'm your local Waterboy, Nick Halby. This is 91.1 KLSU Baton Rouge. You guys have a great day. Enjoy your weekends and go Tigers.